Hey. Don't sneak up on me like that, Fingy. I'm working on a new video. My name is Fingy, and this is going to be an ambitious one, too. I'm going to thoroughly detail how a new entry in a long-neglected Nintendo game could work. What, Kid Icarus? No. Earthbound? No. Romania? Ice Climber? Diddy Kong Racing? No. Puzzle League? No. Fossil Fighter? No. Etc.? Custom Robo? Not yet.
If you consider yourself a Nintendo fan on the internet, then you've probably been on a forum or website or seen a YouTube video or something where people have sung the woes of the long-neglected, if not totally dead, F-Zero franchise. What exactly is F-Zero? It's the game series where Captain Falcon from Smash Bros. Comes. Going off of that alone, some might be led to think that the game has something to do with fighting, considering good old Douglas J's proponency for punching and kicking in a Falcon fashion. However, it may shock you to learn that Smash Bros. Invented these now iconic moves, and Falcon himself spent his pre-Smash Bros. Appearances in instruction manuals and Nintendo Power comics. For the F-Zero franchise has little to do with the character of Captain Falcon himself at its core, and everything to do with racing hover vehicles known as F-Zero machines. Up until the days of the Nintendo Wii, this series might have been considered obscure, but it was anything but infrequently iterated. Every Nintendo console and handheld had at least one F-Zero game on it since the series debuted on the SNES, aside from the Virtual Boy, who did have an F-Zero title in the works, but was cancelled, along with the whole darn system for being ugly and stupid. The F-Zero franchise's identity is rooted in two key elements: showcasing powerful hardware through sheer speed of gameplay, and exuding style in music, art, and graphical design that screams cool. The first game on SNES showcased Mode 7 with both its isometric quasi-3D environments and unprecedented speed. The sequel on the Nintendo 64, F-Zero X, ran at a steady 60 frames per second, in 1998, mind you. That was impressive at the time, and the game itself is still solid fun to play today. The Game Boy Advance got not one, not two, but 3 titles, though there was some region exclusivity going on, and they all improved upon the series' mechanics. And the Arcade Machine and GameCube titles, AX and GX respectively, co-developed by Sega, perfected the formula while also adding a lot of fun visuals, characterization, and even a full single-player campaign, with cutscenes and everything. Oh, Sega. You filthy Falcon perverts. By that time, the series had evolved to what internal staff at Nintendo considered to be its peak. Console technology had arrived at such a point that there really wasn't much innovation in graphics or speed for Nintendo to showcase. So I suppose it made sense at the time for Nintendo to skip out on developing new F-Zero games for the DS or the Wii. I suppose I understand. I mean, you could still play the GBA titles on your DS and GX on your Wii through true backwards compatibility. Remember that? Those were the days. Not to mention that the first 2 console titles were also available on the Wii's Virtual Console. Remember that? Those were the days. But by the time we arrived at the 3DS and Wii U era, players were left confused as to why Nintendo wasn't doing anything new with F-Zero. HD or 3D visuals, second screen integration, online multiplayer? There were so many new avenues that the F-Zero series could explore, but Keeper of the Flame Shigeru Miyamoto made it sound uncertain that they'd ever let us see anything new from Captain Falcon and Friends. In an interview conducted by the French game site GameCult in 2012, the following F-Zero related exchange took place.
After a quick survey on Twitter, one of the game's French game is the most F-Zero. Nobody really understand why Nintendo hasn't made the new one since 2003. Is there a chance we can see it back on Wii U?
Miyamoto replied, eyes open wide.
I am really pleased to hear Twitter's opinion, because since the first episode on SNES many games have been made but the series has evolved very little. I thought people had grown weary of it. I'd like to say thank you very much and try to wait by playing Nintendo Land's F-Zero minigame. I am also very curious and I'd like to ask those people, why F-Zero? What do you want that we haven't done before?
Now this interview is innocent enough. Uncle Miyamoto-san Sama just didn't think anyone liked F-Zero anymore, and thought we'd prefer endless new Super Mario Bros. Titles instead. Oh, you silly little shiggy. Have some applesauce, you scamp.
But then that lovable Mario-making mischievant had an interview with IGN during E3 2013. When asked about the future of F-Zero, he told the interviewer, quote,
I certainly understand that people want a new F-Zero game. I think where I struggle is that I don't really have a good idea for what's new that we could bring to F-Zero that would really turn it into a great game again. Certainly I can see how people looking at Mario Kart 8 could see, through the anti-gravity, a connection to F-Zero. But I don't know, at this point, what direction we could go in with a new F-Zero. It's tough. We come to the show and we bring a lot of great franchises and everyone says, oh, well, where's this game that I want to play? Where's something new? I only have so much capacity. Obviously in the past we've tried to work with other companies, where we've let them develop games for us in franchises like Star Fox and F-Zero, but the more we think about it, the more we prefer to be able to create those games internally, on our own. We've obviously, as I mentioned, been working on what we can do to increase our internal staff in a way that will allow us to have more projects going at the same time. So we can create new games and work on additional old IP and still maintain the other primary franchises that people want to see.
Now you've got to understand, Nintendo was not doing too hot during this period of time, and few companies wanted to develop games on the sinking ship that was the Wii U. Miyamoto did end up convincing third-party studio Platinum Games to develop a new Star Fox on the Wii U, that released in 2016, but that game was not too well received by fans or critics, for many reasons, the least of which not being due to its original control scheme. F-Zero, on the other hand, was still a no-show, and seemingly a low priority for Nintendo on the whole. But speaking of Star Fox Zero and original control schemes, a couple months prior to Star Fox Zero's release, Miyamoto said in an interview with Smosh, yes, that Smosh, 2015 was a very low period for Nintendo. Miyamoto was quoted as saying,
We see a lot of other designers who are kind of making more traditional racing style games, so we try to focus on something that feels a little bit more gamey. So maybe if we create a new type of controller interface and we find that controller interface is particularly suited for F-Zero, then maybe we'll do something again with it in the future.
As much as fans would love to see the F-Zero series iterated on with all the innovations of gaming that have become standard for other titles, let alone games in the racing genre, Nintendo themselves, at least at the time, admitted to not wanting to dredge the old boat out of the water unless they could make a game that felt totally different from past titles.
New Super Mario Bros., Legend of Zelda, Pokemon, Kirby. Oh sure, those can all function nigh identically for years, and in some cases decades. But F-Zero? No. I thought you said this video would be about you detailing how you'd make a new game, not complaining about how there isn't. Right you are, Fingless. I thought my name was Fingy. Now that we have some insight on F-Zero's history and the reason for its dormancy, I can begin to outline what I believe, anyway, to be F-Zero's best bet for a future title.
Do bear in mind, I'm no professional game designer, just a fan. I have a pretty good idea of what I want, but I am in no way an authority on the topic. This is just for fun, and in part to try and keep the F-Zero name semi-relevant, in hopes that it'll return for real one day. I'm sure most would agree that the gameplay is the most important aspect of most, if not all games, F-Zero being no exception. Mechanically, I don't think there's really any major alterations that would have to take place. As the old saying goes, if it ain't broke, then don't shoehorn in some unnatural and detrimentally alienating control method. Or, something like that. That being said, I wouldn't be opposed to some new control options, like gyro steering or motion-based boosting, so long as it doesn't replace good old-fashioned buttons and sticks. Alternate control options are ultimately harmless, and overall beneficial for the games industry on the whole. I think Nintendo in particular is very good about utilizing such implementation, with games like Splatoon 2, Mario Tennis Aces, and ARMS.
Are you ever gonna shut up about ARMS?
No! The primary gameplay motivator will still be to finish in first place. Shocking, I know. boost, body, grip, weight, speed, damage, collision, KOs, and the kitchen sink will carry over from GX. However, a new gameplay mechanic that might make for a fun and refreshing experience could involve integrating special moves for each character, or at the very least unique character animations to accompany a big meter-depleting special move. This would not only help the game stand out from previous titles, but could also help endear players to the cast, who've spent most of their time hidden within the confines of their hovercrafts in series past. I have a hunch that such a bold and fun new mechanic would attract new players too, especially if a hearty Falcon Punch were to be included in a reveal trailer. Again, I'm no professional game designer. I just imagine big flashy special moves providing a huge speed boost or power attack, albeit as a maneuver that is highly risky to pull off correctly and or difficult to attain. One final thing to mention on that, should a big new special move system be put into place, the game should also include a mode or option to play without it. Take a page out of Mario Tennis Aces' book. New game-changing ideas may totally work and provide a fresh new gameplay experience worth learning, but that's no reason to abandon a time-tested formula. F-Zero has had something in the neighborhood of 60 pilots over the course of its history. With how uniquely designed and distinct from one another they all are, not to mention how widely unknown many of them are to most people, I don't think making new characters would need to necessarily be a priority for this game. It'd be nice, and I would love for it to happen, but I don't have any specific examples of new pilot concepts for this video, because the sheer scope of potential designs and concepts are so vast, they could honestly take on any form should they come about. I'm all for new characters, I'm all for wacky designs, it's one of the main reasons why I love ARMS. Don't say anything, Fingy. But F-Zero again has somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 unique pilots in its past. If you really need new characters, just drudge up some of the ones that no one remembers. Like QQQ, look at him, isn't he cute? Like this little taxi driver, aww, look at him. For how distinct they mostly are from one another, they all adhere to a consistent style that fuses the flash and energy of action anime with the style and art direction of Western comic books. I'm sure it's widely known by now that the conceptualization of Metroid was directly inspired by the movie Alien. But did you know that F-Zero's designs and overall motif was directly inspired by Tim Burton's 1990 film Batman? With this in mind, I believe that the whole game should embrace this classic superhero style tenfold. The UI, the menus, the character art, everything in this game should adopt a comic book aesthetic. I'm talking splash pages, panels, automatopoeias, motion lines. Sure, the game itself would use high-definition 3D assets, but the game's stylistic identity should be an undeniable homage to classic American superhero comics. Think Comic Zone, Sly Cooper 2, or Marvel vs. Capcom 3, but tailored to the futuristic sci-fi scape of F-Zero. In fact, the adoption of such a style might be an easy compromise on cutscenes, should Nintendo not feel like accounting for such things in the budget. And while we're talking about story, what should the story of this game be? For multiplayer-focused Nintendo games, and really just most Nintendo games on the whole, this aspect isn't given nearly the amount of attention as players like me would prefer. But if it were up to me, I would make single-player content a priority. When last we saw our hero, Captain Douglas J. Falcon, he had just won the Grand Prix, thwarted the evil Deathborn in his conquest to conquer the universe by harnessing the dark energy in the championship belt, and even won a race for his very soul against the mysterious Creators, who came out of nowhere and are really only a cute way of making a race against developer Ghost best time the final challenge. So what do you do next? I guess you compete in another tournament. I mean, you know, it's a racing game. Well, actually, I've got two ideas for how this hypothetical new game could approach the story mode. The first idea? They could sever the story from the shackles of Captain Falcon and allow any pilot to be selected by the player. Structure the experience around individual missions to be completed in a set order, like Street Fighter or Puyo Puyo, whereby each mission is just an encounter against increasingly more difficult opponents with occasional bonus missions. So for instance, you could choose to play as, say, Octoman, whereby you'd face off against 6 or 7 other pilots in individually tailored challenges. 1 or 2 opponents in each set of missions would be unlockable characters, and clearing the mission would net them for you. And to really make it feel like a story mode, each mission could even start with an exchange between or amidst the pilots. I would also personally love it if each character has a personalized piece of victory art, like in ARMS.
I like ARMS a lot, okay? Sue me, jeesh!
The final encounter of each mission set would be against a lower tier villain, like Black Shadow, Zoda, or the Skull. After clearing story mode as every character, or a certain number of characters, you'd unlock a super challenge, or series of super challenges, that ends with a race against a resurrected Deathborn, brought back to life by the creators for some reason. As opposed to GX, where they created him for no reason. And after clearing this/these challenges, Deathborn is unlocked as a playable pilot, and a true ending is achieved. I feel like this approach to single-player content just makes sense for games that heavily emphasize big casts and multiplayer competitive gameplay loops. It serves as a great excuse to do a bunch of world building without having to stick to the regiment of some linear story whereby the whole cast must be in particular places at particular times.
So what's the second idea? You said at the start of the section that you had 2 ideas about how it could work. Oh yeah, well, the second idea would just be another, linear solo romp from the perspective of Captain Falcon, like in GX. Not really something I'd prefer over the first idea. Unless
an actual dynamic story mode is concocted, with stakes, character development, gripping encounters, and an emphasis on witty writing, standout moments, even set pieces, where the missions are all set in context of the events of the plot, with courses or maps that take place outside of standard race courses. Maybe the whole thing could be hinged on Falcom's seldom explored role as a mercenary, where he's going planet to planet arresting creeps for cash. And there'd be a hub area, and an open world, and Twisted Metal-esque car combat that could maybe even be an additional mode for the multiplayer, with achievements, unlockables, branching story options, world building.
And it takes place in the same world as Star Fox, and Metroid, and Pikmin, and On Harriet American War Heroes. Yeah. Maybe I dream a little, too big.
Not that something I've learned to suppress after years of being a Nintendo fan. In all actuality, a new F-Zero title would probably end up being more like Star Fox Zero. Stylistically impressive, if not a little uninspired, narratively bland and an actual betrayal to the last game on GameCube, and the controls would be totally different, potentially to the series' detriment. But that's a worst-case scenario. I could be wrong. Nintendo's changed a lot since the Wii U days, and they've gotten a great many other studios to aid them in developing more first-party games at a time. Not to mention the Switch started its life with the massively successful Mario Kart 8, so now might be the best time in a long time Nintendo's had to take chances on their other racing IPs. And they know now how long we've been waiting for the return of F-Zero. 9 years is such a long time to wait without a new game. But that was back in 2012, when Game Cult first brought the fan demand to Miyamoto's attention. It's been 17 years since the last F-Zero game. 17! If Nintendo waits any longer than 10 months from now to deliver a new game, then the series' hiatus will be old enough to vote.
Well, regardless of whether or not Nintendo is bringing the series back anytime soon, these were my ideas on how to do a new F-Zero. Are there any aspects of this hypothetical game that I failed to mention that you'd like to be included? Or any things I've mentioned that you do differently? How about other neglected game series that you'd like to see revived? I invite you to discuss all these things and more in the comments below. And if you've enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, then subscribe my channel and leave a like on this video too. Maybe even share it around if you really want to go the extra mile in helping me and my content out. Until next time, I will see you the next time I see you. Falcon Punch! Did you not want to mention that a new F-Zero game should have online multiplayer? Oh, well, yeah, that goes without saying, right? No, I don't think it does. Doesn't? Well, why not? Because we just said it.